On Dr. Cabral, what's up, man? You're joining me from Maine. First off, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here with you today. Just was able to get accustomed with your show and everything that you teach. It's absolutely amazing. And so I'm really happy that we got connected.
Yeah, man, I'm very excited to have you on. Like I was just telling you, my wife and her friends have been sending me all these questions, and I was trying to tell them like I can't talk to them for 4 hours today. So we'll cover what we can, but
Yeah.
I'm pumped to have you on and actually learn a little bit about your story too. Your journey, I think, around health and wellness started when you went through some complications at age 17.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, it seemed unexpected at the time. Looking back, I should have seen all the signs, right? Like they
Mhm.
were all there. The allergies, the low level asthma, the brain fog, the skin rashes, the bloating. Like I should have known. But this is back in the 90s. And we just didn't know back then. Honestly, like it's
Mhm.
not like my parents neglected me. They didn't want to help me. It's just when I would go to the doctor, they would give me allergy medicine, allergy shots. They would give me medication for terrible insomnia. They gave me Prilosec for acid reflux, but that's what they knew how to do, right? You just treat the symptoms and you keep on keeping on.
Mhm.
And then ultimately, in around October, November of my senior of high school, my whole immune system shut down. Like literally, all the glands in my body, the lymph nodes all started to swell. Went to the doctors; they had no idea what it was, and I was left with what felt like a permanent flu. Like literally, brain fog, fatigue, joint pain, fever, sweating that just never broke.
Mhm.
And they had no idea. That went on for 2 years. And after 2 years, still just trying to like make it through high school, make it through college. Lost everything, by the way. Like I was National Honor Society. I was, uh, played varsity sports. Couldn't do anything. Like legitimately, I was fortunate. I made it through my senior year after taking about 3 or 4 weeks off from school. They wanted to kick me out. Literally, I was like, I wasn't the best student. I wasn't the best athlete. I wasn't like, but I was a good kid who tried hard, right? And they wanted to
Mhm.
kick me out of school because I was super sick. So that was like my I don't want to go off on tangents, but like I was done with school at that point. I'm like, you're gonna kick me out because of like number of days in school. I'm like, I'm doing the homework when you send it. Like it was just crazy. So I was getting really depressed. I was anxious because doctors
Mhm.
didn't know what it was. Finally, they figured out technically after going to natural health doctors and they ran a bunch of tests. It ended up being autoimmune issues, rheumatoid arthritis, which you don't really see. Again, this is 25, 28 years ago, whatever it was. um, I had Addison's disease, which they never would have thought, again, that a 17 now 19 years old would have, which is the inability to produce cortisol. So that's why I had flu-like symptoms, because body couldn't produce cortisol, which is an anti-inflammatory. So I had brain fog, insomnia, couldn't
Tons of
sleep because I had no
inflammatory.
energy. Yeah, type 2 diabetes. I mean, the list goes on, but it's instead of me kind of singing the sad story, I'll tell you this is that luckily I have the personality of being someone who's very stubborn, and I'm just was not going to let that be my life, even though I was in some very dark times and I relapsed a lot after getting well, would relapse. Ultimately, I meet my mentor 10 years later. I had already seen 2 dozen conventional medicine doctors, I don't know, 50, 80, who knows, natural health doctors for over 9.5 years. Met my mentor, Dr. Pete. And it's a wild story. I can share that if you want, but I don't want to, just to be about my story. But I met her within 6 months. No more Addison's disease, no more type 2 diabetes, no more rheumatoid arthritis, no more insomnia. I mean, like the list goes on. And so you say, how does that possible? Well, it wasn't that I wasn't doing work along the way. It was someone organized what to do, put it in the right order,
Mhm.
and enabled me to follow a path to heal. Because I was trying, like many people, a different diet, different
Sure.
supplements, different this. And like sometimes it worked. I'm like, great, but am I going to keep taking 30 supplements the rest of my life? So I
Mhm.
would like stop some and then I would relapse back, having no idea what was helping and what wasn't. So, no, needless to say, this is what allowed me then to now know how to help others. So without the struggle, without the pain, there is no message, there is no healing that I can now help with others. So
Mhm.
I was okay. I'm very, very okay with having gone that being my story for 17 years old to 27, because now every day is great. I feel better each and every year and I get to do what I love. So it's pretty incredible.
During those 10 years from 17 to 27, for your career and your passion, had you already decided you wanted to get in the health and wellness space, around natural medicine, remedies, that sort of thing?
Yeah, and keep in mind that I had already been so jaded with all systems. And
Mhm.
it's like, this isn't the right thing for everybody, but like I was done with school my senior year of high school. And luckily for me, it's just some people can memorize, take the test, and get a good grade. I
Mhm.
could always read and memorize. And so for me, I just got through my 4 years of college, did well for undergrad, but I was already working as a nutritionist and personal trainer because that was my passion. And I couldn't study that in school. So after I got out of school, meaning like college, my summer breaks, I always worked two jobs. One of them was at a gym, and one of them was, well, I was working as a nutritionist at the same time. So I was doing what I loved. And here's why, though. I saw some hope. When I changed my diet and I added supplements, I started to feel a little bit better.
Mhm.
Completely better? No, but I felt like definitely better. So I'm like, oh, there's something to this. And when I talked about it with my medical doctors, they're like, oh, there's nothing to that. And those nutritional supplements just cause, expensive urine, as like their joke is. I said, all right. So I stopped them. I felt worse again. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm going to do them anyways, whether they say it works or not, because who's to know? This is pre-internet. Remember, like this is in the 90s. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm in Medford,
definitely.
Massachusetts. We had a Commodore 64 computer and dial-up internet. Like I wasn't, I'm not over there citing PubMed like there is today. People forget like how hard it was to get information. So like on my desk, I've got a stack of books. Like this is what I do all day to this day is I read. But here's why. Because in a person's book, like from a doctor or coach or personal trainer or whatever, when they write a book, usually they've been in practice at least 10 years, sometimes
Mhm.
20. And it's all of that person's knowledge in a book, and you get to read it for like $14. It's like the cheat code that people forget about because now we read a 1,500 word article and we think we know what to do. So
Mhm.
I read books. And so when I say, like, oh, well, I've now worked with well over 250,000 people. I personally done one-on-one over 40,000 appointments. We've run over 500,000 labs. Yeah, but it came from
Dang.
learning from everybody. If you wrote a book, I read it during the early 2000s and late 90s. That's the truth.
Early on, what were a few of those supplements that started to make a biggest change in your health?
First off, I thought I was getting there's a huge difference. And this is, I think, really important for everybody. You could get enough macronutrients, but you might not be getting enough micronutrients.
Mhm.
So I was eating enough food as a high school and college student, get enough protein, get enough carbs, all those things, but not enough micronutrients. And it's not always just vitamins. So yes, I did better. There is one very specific supplement called an activated B complex that had methylfolate, B6, which is paradoxal 5-phosphate, and methylcobalamin. No doubt about it, that helped with a lot of methylation issues that I had. Okay.
Mhm.
Adding more vitamin C was tremendous for my immune system. Turns out the more processed carbs you eat and the more your immune system's stressed and the more allergies you have, the more vitamin C you use. Okay. Can't get enough from food because humans don't produce their own vitamin C. They have to get it
Mhm.
exogenously, unlike animals, basically. So I started taking vitamin C. That helped. I mean, there's so many different nutritional supplements that I could point to, but I don't want people to think like that's the cure, right? It's not.
Sure.
I started taking creatine. Lo and behold, that helped. Why? It helps produce more ATP, but it's like it's never getting to the root cause. That's the issue. So it's not like I'm against these supplements. I'm all for them, but you need to know why you're taking them and what the underlying root cause was. So like creatine helped a lot, and that's because my mitochondria were decimated. Because part of the story that I left out, it's too long a story to tell. It lasted too long. From 14 years old to 17 years old, I took 2 antibiotics every single day for 3 years.
Dang.
And previous to that, I had taken a Z-Pack or azithromycin or amoxicillin at least 6 times a year. Our
Mhm.
pediatrician just gave
That's a
out
lot.
amoxicillin like it was Kit Kat, like it was just like Tic Tacs, I should say. Like it's just like, yeah, you have a common cold. And keep in mind, my family, it's 4 kids under 5 years old. So it's absolute
Dang.
chaos. And I
Mhm.
get it. So my pediatrician feels bad. My mom keeps 5-day Z-Packs in the house. You start to get a cold, you take a Z-Pack. So by the time I was 18, I had taken 3,000 capsules of amoxicillin.
Dang.
Did anybody know they didn't even know what leaky gut was back then. They
Yeah,
used
it's
to make fun of
depleting
it,
your
right?
system.
It depleted my system, blocks nutrient absorption, and decimates my own natural immune system by destroying my microbiome in my gut. So now everything I eat, even if it's healthy food, is moving through my gut wall and it's causing inflammation because my immune system sees it. It's
Mhm.
not a mistake that it goes after it. And now it triggers an inflammatory overload on my body.
With
So, and it's not just body. I want to share that. You don't get Addison's disease from that. You get
mhm.
Addison's disease from, yes, autoimmune, all sorts of issues, but also being super stressed.
Yeah,
I'm the
definitely.
oldest born, perfectionist, like got my own challenges, you know, mentally as a child, and trying to get into college, trying to get a
Mhm.
scholarship because we're not paying for college, like all these things, working a job while going to school. Like it was crazy. And so between the mental and the physical health,
Mhm.
that broke my body down. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, uh, took me a long time to recover.
It's incredible what just stress will do to your body. People don't realize how bad stress is, not just for your mind and your sleep, but like what it's doing internally and physically to your body. Fast forward to 2024. People nowadays are always trying to figure out a new health remedy or, like you said, a new diet or a new program. And I think there's more education about natural remedies and different things you can do, from supplements or getting outside and all these different things. But what, in your opinion, is the root cause of, and you could say, the number one health issue that we're experiencing right now?
Well, I said if I could only work on two things with each individual, one mental, one physical, it is stress,
Hmm.
and the other is gut based issues. And that is because it's then a snowball effect.
Hmm.
So um, the issue is that people don't see those. They see the downstream effects,
Hmm.
and the symptoms then look like skin rashes, migraines, hair loss, low mood, low energy, low libido, all the lows, right?
Hmm.
And then they start to then treat all of those. Low thyroid. I mean, low thyroid is never low thyroid. Like literally, like your thyroid is like fourth or fifth in line as to everything else going wrong first.
Hmm.
So it's nutrient deficiencies, toxicities, HPA axis dysfunction, which is stress in the adrenals. Thyroid plays a backseat to all of these things as essentially the thermostat and metabolic booster of the body. And so it's, yes, you can take great thyroid based supplements or take a pharmaceutical if you want, but there's always an underlying reason. And
Hmm.
so my job now is just to share with people, we no longer need to guess. Fortunately, I was shared these labs when I was in my mid 20s or so, and they're all done at home. You don't have to go through your PCP. It's sometimes called functional medicine, but I don't call it functional medicine anymore because functional medicine used to be what my mentor, Dr. Pete, did. Functional medicine now is go to a doctor, run blood work, and get put on hormone
Hmm.
therapy. Now, again, like I'm not even against that, but that's not functional medicine. Like that's not. Well, let's ask, why is progesterone low? Why does someone have estrogen dominance as a woman? Why does a male have low testosterone in his 30s? Like that's, you should never supplement, in my opinion, with low testosterone in your 30s without looking for the underlying root cause, only because
Hmm.
I truly care about people. And I know that that's going to be a really bad scene in 20 years
Got it.
because they didn't look at what would cause that low testosterone in the first place. Now, there are always medical conditions. I'm not saying that. But when you go to a doctor, you have no medical condition, you have low testosterone, there's about a dozen reasons why. We can just go through those dozen reasons and find out which ones, because not only do you feel better when fixing those, yes, your testosterone gets boosted, but overall you become a healthier human and you're most likely going to live longer and
Mhm.
healthier.
And you said stress and gut issues, and that honestly is a great direction for this conversation, because those are the two things that I have really tried to be talking about more and being more educated on. And I feel like so much can start from your gut as well. But I want to start with stress.
Yeah.
Stress is something I think we all, in some form or fashion, feel. We maybe not realize that it's stress, but that's, I guess, a term for it and the way you feel. What can we do, and what are some of the effects of stress on the body, and things that we can do to help regulate the stress?
So the issue is people, and at least this the Western based mindset, we just push through. So
Mhm.
it's like when the stress, gets hard, we just are taught to push through, which, I mean, I don't disagree. Like it makes you a survivor and you build character and all those things. The problem is when it's chronic stress, that's when it's detrimental to the body. The
Mhm.
body can handle a day of stress, a couple of days of
Sure.
stress, a week of stress. It's when it becomes more than a month of daily stress. And I want to kind of take a step back. So uh, inside my book, I talk about a three-part pronged issue with how people become sick. So first, their genetics. Everybody just blames it on genetics. So best example I can give you is this. All four of my grandparents had rheumatoid arthritis. Both my parents had rheumatoid arthritis. I got rheumatoid arthritis. So I didn't have rheumatoid arthritis. Then I got rheumatoid arthritis at 17 years old. Then I got rid of it in my 20s and no longer have it today. So did I change my genetics? No, right? Didn't change my genetics. Still the same individual. What I changed is the expression of those genes. That's called epigenetics. And that's the environment. So first we have the genetics. I'm not going to get Hashimoto's, not in my genes, but I will get rheumatoid arthritis. That's in my genes. I will get diabetes. That's in my genes. Many cousins and family members with that. Okay. But I won't get some of the others. So that is, genetics are real. I'm not saying they're not. The second is the environment. The environment now is what I call the rain barrel. If you fill it up high enough and it overflows, typically with a trigger event, that's number 3, I'll talk about that, then you get the diagnosed disease. So it could be EMFs, it could be heavy metals, it could be the gut issues we spoke about, it could be the stress that we're going to go, deep on, all of those things and more. Okay. So you start to feel symptoms, the more full it gets. Like for me, the insomnia, the hives, the allergies, the low level asthma, the headaches every afternoon in school, the bloating, the acid reflux symptoms. There's something wrong, but rain barrel hasn't overflowed yet. Then there's a trigger event. What's the trigger event? Almost always stress based. So let's get away from me for a moment. Let's talk about some of the cases that I've worked on. Alopecia areata, or like you lose all the hair in your head. Like how could that be possible? Yeah. All right, autoimmune issue. Fine. How did it happen? Almost every single time in my practice, and I've seen many people with this, a massive stressful event around relationship with their spouse or significant other or child. In almost every single case. Like, and I'm not talking about, oh yeah, it's an outlier. No, like 9 out of 10 times that I see this, it's that. So what happens is we are emotionally connected to others. And sometimes it's a job. Like I've seen people lose a job that is part of their identity. And when that changes the identity or there's a break, that makes us very stressed. So I know it's a long roundabout story, but stress isn't like, oh, I got to go, pick up the kids, or I got to get this deadline for work. Yeah, that's stressful. It is something deeply emotional that eats at you, that affects your sleep. That's the stress that I'm talking about. And it does matter. Now, sometimes it's childhood trauma. Many people have been through very difficult childhoods, and it carries forward into their adulthood. And that's why I write about in the rain barrel effect, the de-stress protocol: diet, exercise, stress reduction, toxin removal, rest, which is your sleep protocols, emotional balance, scientifically backed supplements, and a success mindset. So if you break through those, it's only 1 about supplements, and there's 4 about stress and emotions, right? And so like, that's the thing, is that I put in the last one, mindset, because you can get people well, but if they still identify with their disease, they relapse.
Still in it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
They're still mentally
and so
there.
That's why this is so important. Stress, mindset, whatever you want to call it. You in order to become something different, you need to rewire the brain. So if you no longer want to be Lyme disease, rheumatoid arthritis, whatever you want it to be, you need to see yourself as someone who's healthy.
Yeah. You need to pick
that's
yourself
not
as
easy.
being healthy. Yeah. Such a good point, because people are so, I mean, it doesn't even have to be like around in health and wellness. They could like think they're a loser, and like just go
bad
around
at relationships, bad at their job. But yeah, all of those.
None of that's going to change unless you change their thinking a little bit. For stress relievers, what are some things that you recommend people to do if they're super stressed? And even if it's just like work stress and they're just stressed and, can't sleep because, they have something to do. Like, what are things that you recommend for people to relieve some of that stress?
Yeah, I think for most of us, we try to do too much. Our to-do list is too long. And we don't plan in any like downtime or enjoyment time. So I actually have talked about this quite a number of times. I talk about it on my podcast, and I tell people, throw away your to-do list and only use your calendar and schedule your day. People are like, well, I like to be a little bit more free. No, that not scheduling things creates more anxiety, creates more stress, because when you schedule your day, you know exactly what you can get done. And if you can't get done what you want to get done, then something else has to go. And so you start to prioritize really what has deeper meaning in your life. And so, like, I know I say they're young daughters. My daughters keep getting older every year. It's crazy. But, they're turning now 10 and 12. And so I'm like, well, I know what I was like when I was 16, 17, 18. And so I'm like, how many more years do I really have? So I prioritize that. Now, because
Mhm.
again, I could work for 16 hours a day. Like, there's no doubt about it. But that would then neglect, and I could come up with all sorts of excuses. My family needs me to, like, no, but my time with my daughters is the priority.
Mhm.
And so I see them before I go to work and I see them after I go to work, and then the weekends are off. Now, I'm obviously very privileged to be able to do that and have worked to get to this point. Not everybody can. I get that. But for me, I make that a priority. Like, that is a priority. And for people with their health, you need to carve out 6 months where health or body transformation or your career or relationship, like, that becomes a priority. And it
Yep.
can't always be at every stage of your life. I always look at, okay, there's your finances and career. We all need that unless you were born independently wealthy. There's your spirituality. There's your health. There's your body, because that's a big part of it that people overlook. You want to carry this body around for 100 years, maybe more. Like, you have to take care of it. It really does matter. And then there is health, body, your career, relationships. And so then there's your relationships. Like, that's just kind of what I look at as the five, and most things can be bucketed in there.
Mhm.
And what we need to do is we need to actually prioritize all those in the schedule. I want to share one more line with you that I love and that I really do live by now. It is, if you work with your mind, play with your hands. And basically, what that means is that if you're in front of a computer for a lot of the day or your phone, get outside, get moving, exercise, do sculpture, do art, go for a walk with your dog. Like, do something non in your head.
Mhm.
And so now for me, I know, like, it's not perfect, but I do an hour of calls outside of my house walking on my phone. So it's amazing. I get 5,000 steps doing that in an hour. After work, every single day. So I actually work out 6 days a week. Now, are they crushing workouts? No. But after work, I just get out of my head and I literally just work out. I listen typically to, like, because I don't need to, like, pump myself up, a funny podcast or whatever it is. Like, just
Me
switch
too, yeah.
mindsets. Like, I'm not listening to funny podcast during the day or comedy, whatever it is. Then I have dinner with my family. So I switch modes. So what
Mhm.
I share with people is that I've something called the 3 anchors. Create a morning routine, create a lunchtime, even if it's only 20 minutes, check in with yourself, and an end of the day. Switch off stress. So I can only be stressed out between, like, my morning hours and lunch, then flip the switch. Then my second day, I call it, it's different day, different activities.
Mhm.
And then I switch that off when it's family time. Now, am I perfect? No. One day a month, I'm completely stressed out of my mind, I'm sure, with everything we have going on. And this is what I say to my wife. I say to her literally, I said, today was a really bad day. She's like, do you want to talk about it? And I'm like, not really. I'm like, tomorrow's a new day. I'm just going to go to bed early. And I do that
Nice.
now. And you know what? Tomorrow's a new day. And I feel so much better the next day. Problem hasn't gone away, but it's a clearer head. So anyway, all over the map there, but it works. It really does. You need to get out of your head
Yeah.
and do something with your hands, or something hard, like a
Mhm.
hike or a ruck or a
Yeah.
run or sprints, so that you
Sprints,
can't think
yeah.
about your problems anymore.
Totally. I did that yesterday. I went and ran sprints at, like, my old high school stadium, and I swear, like, after I did 10 160s, I was like, "Dang, I feel great. I could take on the
Yeah.
world right now." With gut issues, I feel like not enough people know how important taking care of your gut is, and a lot of things they see, they don't even realize it's coming from your gut, and a lot of, you would have a rash, or, like, you lose your hair, or anything, and a lot of it has to do with gut issues. What are some of the more common gut issues? And then what are some things that we can do to better take care of our gut?
So you can have gut based issues as the root cause of almost every single disease in the body. And the reason is that we have a tube, starts with our mouth, goes down a foot long or a little larger esophagus, goes into a holding tank called your stomach. Then it moves through about 20, 21 feet of small intestine, then about 5 to 6 feet of large intestine called your colon, and then out of your body as stool, right? That's meant to be the outside of your body, inside your body, and only allow the good stuff in. So it's only supposed to let in amino acids from proteins, fatty acids from fats, glucose molecules from carbs, your vitamins, minerals, like all the micronutrients. Problem is, when you have candida overgrowth, or SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or parasites, or H. pylori, or food sensitivities, you get inflammation in your gut. You start to get bloating, start to get gas, and then the permeability starts, which just means basically your gut wall, like if you think of, it's kind of gross, but if you think of a sausage, you've got this intestinal lining. It's very thin. And when that starts to become more permeable, you don't just let out the good stuff. You let out pathogens, bacteria, these things called lipopolysaccharides, which are extremely inflammatory and dangerous and increase all-cause mortality. And that happens with leaky gut. It's called endotoxemia. Basically, we poison ourselves from the inside out. I talked about on my podcast called the #1 health issue that no one is talking about, endotoxemia. And it's from gut issues. And, it's like, well, what do you do? Well, you need to
where does it
stop.
come from? What do you do?
So endotoxemia comes from the candida overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth, parasites, H. pylori, food sensitivities.
Is that from eating bad foods? Is that from, where's it coming from?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, but it's preceded by consuming alcohol, women using birth control, eating fried foods, anything inflammatory, food sensitivities that bother you, high levels of stress, believe it or not, even cause intestinal permeability, and antibiotics, other medications as well. But antibiotics is how I got it. That was the biggest one. And it basically is creating sepsis inside of your body. Like it's a mild form of sepsis. And it taxes the liver because the first thing that filters your blood is going to be your liver. And then your liver is supposed to get everything, but people think that the liver is able to get everything. It's not. So then it taxes the kidneys. And the kidneys were never meant to filter that amount. So now you have kidney-based issues, which is not good. But all along, it's increasing immune cells in the side of the body because the immune cells see all of this outside pathogens coming in from your intestines now into the bloodstream, and they go to attack it. It creates inflammation, causes cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, potentially Alzheimer's, as well as cancer. Those are the top 5 leading causes of death. And I don't know if you've already mentioned this before, but there really is no real other way that humans pass away and die than those 5. And that's the amazing thing, though, because we can stop all of those except cancer, like predictably. People think you can't stop Alzheimer's. You can, you just can't when it's terminal. Like that, you have to find it early. So you can do a full body MRI, non-contrast, no dye. You can actually see Alzheimer's forming 10 to 20 years in advance, and you can stop it with the MEND protocol and other protocols. So it's like, that's not a death sentence. Cancer, again, that's why I recommend the full body MRI. And if you're able to, these are expensive, and that's why I wish they weren't so expensive. But the Grail test as well is decent, not as good as a full body MRI, but pretty good. And so you can detect these things early. Cardiovascular, type 2 diabetes and blood pressure. Again, I can't give any medical advice. That's I'm not allowed to say anything like that. You can reverse all of those. So now, what are the next leading causes of disease? Well, complications basically of smoking and diabetes.
Yeah.
That's really what they're from. When someone says COPD, kidney disease, what else? Well, those are the main ones. That's after that. And then there's motorcycle accidents and then falls, which people legitimately climbing a ladder up on their roof and falling off. I'm not like, no joking aside.
Yeah.
That is a real cause of many people dying, which is unfortunate. Motorcycle accidents, smoking, complications of diabetes, which is not just eating a lot of sugar. That's what people think. No, it's actually from high fried food, Western standard American diet with the starch. You don't really get diabetes. Let me rephrase that. You don't get diabetes from overeating on fruit. That is a complete misnomer. Like that's I don't know who, but there are many people saying that. It can exacerbate it once you have it, but you don't get diabetes that way. You get diabetes from lipopolysaccharides and endotoxemia and massive amounts of inflammation, and it doesn't happen overnight.
How do you balance your meals to make sure you're getting the right amount of nutrients between each meal or with each meal?
Yeah, I do a very straightforward. I found everybody should do an intermittent fast, but it doesn't have to be skipping breakfast. And I've never asked people to skip breakfast, and I don't think that actually the research it doesn't pan out skipping breakfast as a very good thing for you, one done for the long term. And it increases all-cause mortality. Number one is cardiovascular, and it's because of the stress in the body. So I actually think that you could skip a meal, but it would be dinner, but not breakfast. And that's because cortisol's falling at night. Your body's getting ready to get into sleep-based mode. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Nobody's going to skip dinner. Like that's just not something that people do. And I get it. Like you sit down with your family at that time. Like
Sure.
I understand that.
Part of
So
the
I
relationship. Sure.
fast. Go ahead.
No, I said it's part of the relationships, which is also so important for.
That's right. That's right. That's why. Like you have to enjoy life. And so even if I were, because you can sleep, like again, everything that I say is this is all verifiable, and you can also do it for yourself if you use an Apple Watch or a ring, Whoop strap, whatever. If you skip dinner one night, just only one night, or like people do in our functional medicine detox, you're just having like a shake,
Mhm.
and you look at your sleep scores, your HRV improves,
Yeah,
rested heart rate comes down,
totally.
deep sleep improves, REM, like it's unbelievable. And
It's
so
so
what I do
true.
now is I stop dinner at 6 p.m. So I go to bed about 10. I have 4 hours before bed, start my fast. I eat again at 8 a.m. the next morning when I really start to work. That works great for my body. Not for everybody's, but great for my body. And I have 3 meals. I have breakfast, I have lunch, I have dinner. If I'm doing a hard workout, I actually many years ago started doing a right before the workout and peri nutrition smoothie. So peri just means during.
Mhm.
And it always made me feel so much better, more energy. Just basically, I use something called daily nutritional support powder. It's vitamins, minerals, protein, plant-based protein, and fruit. And the fruit is very simple. I just put in like wild blueberries and a half a frozen banana. And so no high fat, just easy to absorb. And then lo and behold, there's research out there that I came across that someone's actually studied doing peri-workout, essentially blueberries during a workout to decrease inflammation and immune response. And I was like, wow. So some things are anecdotal and they work, and then eventually research catches up, or maybe it was wrong, But the thing is, like, I knew it was working. I wasn't necessarily recommending it. And so anyway, I do that just on weight training days, which is 3 days a week. And it works great for my body.
So do you do a 14-hour intermittent fasting
Yes,
basically
I do.
every day?
Most people in our practice, that's what we have do. If you have hypoglycemia, we'll have you eat within an hour of waking. We might have a little something, but we fix that. Again, like if you're dropping a low blood sugar, why? Adrenal-based issues, high levels of cortisol, norepinephrine. So we'll fix that, but it might take 12 weeks, 16 weeks.
Yeah.
So we work on that. And, I take my sleep very seriously. So I get 8 hours of sleep a night, and I use full spectrum magnesium at dinner, sometimes a little bit of adrenal soothe if I'm stressed, and I use liquid melatonin, but I use a small dose. So there's a big difference in how we use nutritional supplements and sometimes others. Some people recommend 20 milligrams of melatonin, and
That's a
they'll
lot.
point
I
to
don't know.
specific studies. Yeah, and I'm like, but that's not for general population.
Mhm.
So after the age of about 45, 50, we just produce less stomach acid, we produce less melatonin, we start to produce less of a lot of things. So I'm only using 2.5 milligrams 30 minutes before bed. And the difference between using that and not using that is night and day. And so I use a little bit. And so what I always say to people is, and I use a good amount of nutritional supplements, but smallest possible dose to get the desired effect that you want.
There
And
you
that's
go.
what you do. The goal is not to use more. It's actually to use less. Give your body what it needs, though.
Mhm. What is your take on caffeine, coffee, green tea? Do you take it? How important it is? What are some of the benefits of coffee?
Yeah, I used to say, no big deal. Drink coffee or not drink coffee, but only 1 cup per day caffeinated, and then use an organic Swiss water processed decaf if you want another cup.
Mhm.
But I'm very bullish now on coffee, organic coffee, mold free, the whole deal,
Sure.
because the research is actually incredible on ECGC, which is the polyphenol antioxidant in green tea, which, by the way, it does win. Like EGCG from a organic ceremonial grade matcha green tea beats everything. It really does. Like the research on that is incredible. So you might say, well, why don't I drink it? I don't like the taste of it, to be honest with you. I just don't like it. So it's like I actually take it in supplement form, but I don't drink it because I actually enjoy coffee. Now, here's the thing about coffee. Coffee is higher than and can be higher than wild blueberries in antioxidants and polyphenols.
Mhm.
It has been shown to be incredible for producing what's called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, for helping with inflammation in the brain and Alzheimer's. So I am totally good with people having coffee and drinking coffee, The only people that really should be careful and only drink decaf are those that have higher levels of cortisol production, stress, and anxiety, because caffeine is only going to exacerbate that. So there is no one for all, but coffee as a quote unquote superfood, it legitimately is because of the amount of concentrated polyphenols in it. And it's just probably one more reason why, like when you look at, I know, correlation doesn't equal causation, but all the longest lived people drink tea or coffee,
Mhm.
multiple cups typically every single day.
In those blue zones, yeah.
Yes.
With, preventative care, I think it's becoming more of a term people are familiar with, and they're trying to figure out their longevity and health span, not just lifespan, but health span. What are some of the preventative care routines or methods that you would recommend and maybe you even do on a daily basis?
Yeah. So we have something called high performance health. So what that means is our goal is to add a healthy 20 years to everyone's life.
Mhm.
And it's not an outrageous claim. So I shared earlier, well, I didn't share with the average life expectancy. Average life expectancy is 74 years for men, 77 years for women in the United States. That's pretty deplorable. But worse than that is that 20 years before, most Americans are on at least one medication for
Mhm.
some diagnosed disease. And so it's not even like they get a healthy life until 74, 77, and then pass away. They're suffering from some sort of pain or issue for 20 years before, and then they pass away. And the last 5 years is like doctor's appointment every week.
Yeah,
It's not the
miserable.
way that humans were meant to live. So my goal is to say human life expectancy is 120 years. We know that. People telling you that you can live to 150, 200, we might, but no one has. Like we don't know that for sure, but we know humans can live to 120. We know that. Can everyone live to 120? I don't know. I really don't. But I know that people can live to 100, like for sure. And so
Definitely.
the first goal is on our way to 120, why don't we live to 100 healthily? That's a good goal. And so that's how I
That'd be
look at it.
great.
And so I say, let's go from 74 to 94 and 77 to 97. Legitimately, we can do that. So now, how do we get there? Okay, those that don't die from heart disease, blood pressure, stroke, type 2 diabetes live an average of 10 years longer. So now they live to 88 typically.
Mhm.
Okay, so what do? We need to make sure that we don't get heart disease, which is the number one killer. That's the first thing. And so, well, what do we look at? Just cholesterol. And if you get high cholesterol, you take a statin. No, that's the conventional medicine way. So we actually have to look at doing all of the things
Mhm.
that lead to a healthier life, right? It's not one thing. It's the diet, it's the exercise, it's the stress reduction. It's pretty amazing. So like exercise doesn't get its due because it's work, it's hard. And I get that. I hate to run, but also I love to run because it's hard. And again, it gets me out of my head, but also I don't like to do it. And so when I do it, I feel good about me that I did it. Like it's also a nice little confidence booster. But the thing is, I talked about endotoxemia earlier. I talked about lipopolysaccharides. They found that fit people, even with the same diet and issues as those with the endotoxemia, did not have the same amount because they were healthier and fitter. It was remarkable. And so basically, exercise
Sure.
is protective in its nature because it's
Mhm.
basically a hermetic stressor, helps modulate inflammation. And the other great thing is this, like too many people are skipping breakfast, but they're not working out with weights. Okay. Well, studies have clearly shown if you skip breakfast and you don't work out with weights, the majority of the weight loss is muscle, the vast majority.
Mhm.
So now, yeah, you've lost weight on the scale. I guarantee you 18 months from now, you're going to put back on weight. And at 50 years old, it's going to be a whole lot harder to put on 10 pounds of muscle than it was, previous in life. So
Sure.
nobody's sharing that information. But when they showed 3 times a week weight workouts, and it wasn't even a good weight workout. It was literally like a machine circuit at a gym. They did that. They still fasted 16 hours. Now the majority of weight loss was fat loss. So there's so much nuance to all of this, but all you hear on social media is a 60-second reel from someone, giving a little part to it. And it's frustrating for those like who really, want to help.
Yeah. With, I know people are always trying to figure out what type of labs they can get and they can take. What would be a few of the labs or maybe one lab that people could start out with to really start identifying what's going on?
So I love it's called the starter kit, but it's also called the vitamin tox
Mhm,
test. Starter kit, but because like, hey, if you're just looking to get started, this is the place. And then you want to run that if you can every 6 to 12 months so that things just don't pop up.
mhm,
And so what it looks at is all your vitamin levels, your mineral levels, your gut health, and heavy metals.
mhm.
And so if you know that, you don't know everything, but you know a lot of the deficiencies and toxicities that lead to disease. So that's the starter kit or the vitamin tox test. That's by Equalife. The other one is called the Big Five. That's I know there's an expense to it. Totally get that. And again, I understand that. When, I just let you know, at 19 years old, when I started seeing natural health doctors, I was presented with these same labs. My mother and I ran two. That's what we could
Mm,
afford. So I get it. You start with where you're able to,
sure.
but there is the ability in the Big Five to run all of your hormones, your cortisol level. So if I had never run that test, I would never have known I had Addison's
Mhm,
disease. So pretty remarkable. So stress hormones and sex hormones, thyroid is on that one, vitamin D. Then there's a food sensitivity test from an IgG perspective, which is a latent response. And then there's omega-6 to omega-3. So important you run that. You really only need to run it twice in your life. You take it. What's your baseline with your diet? If your diet gets enough omega-3s, you don't need to supplement omega-3.
mhm,
If you're below the baseline and you have inflammation, you take 2 soft gels a day of daily omega-3, retest again. Great. You're at a 3-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. Your risk reduction rate for cardiovascular disease goes down 90%. You're good. If you just stay on that, you're good to go. So I like to keep it basic. We can make things super complex. Don't get me wrong, but start with the foundation. And then if this is something that you really enjoy getting into, go from there. And I talk about this too. My book is free now. I tell people that get the information, but don't get an article of information. It doesn't have to be
mhm.
my book. Read a book on this, and I'm telling you right now, you'll get all the different nuances where it's not an all for one, a pill for every ill. It's not that type of
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, you're just like a wealth of you have I feel like your content and what you put out, people can whatever they're searching for, I feel like they can find an idea of how to get better, a resolution to whatever they're going through. As we kind of close up shop here, I love how you talk about getting out in the sun so much and being outside and kind of just
Mhm.
like that being a big part of what should be daily experience for everybody. Why is getting out in the sun so important?
We as humans are connected to the sun. Without it, we're not here. Like that is part of our survival in nature. It helps us grow our food. It helps the trees where we breathe that oxygen, to grow, like all of those things. But it's needed for us as well. So the where this gets misconstrued is that it's like, well, the sun's bad for you because if you get a sunburn, you can get cancer. Okay, well, nobody's recommending a sunburn. So like we'll just kind of put that there. But there's a place between no sun and a sunburn. And it's kind of like nutritional supplements. Like there's a place between no nutritional supplements and taking 40 nutritional
Hmm.
supplements, right? Like there's just an in between. And so then it becomes bio individualized. And so I come from a Portuguese and Italian background. My skin's a little darker. And so I'm able to get a little bit more sun than the average individual without getting a sunburn. Now, I have my limits. If I'm in the sun for 3 hours, I could start to get a sunburn on my neck and shoulders. Well, what do? I put on safe, non toxic sunscreen, or I put on a sun shirt. And I always have both at the beach. And so it's kind of like it's, what you're looking to. Now, for sun benefits, though, you enable your body to improve detoxification from the sun. You mobilize vitamin D3 and cholesterol. You improve circulation. Your body, especially in the warmer weather, begins to sweat. And then when you think about it, our bodies were meant to sweat.
Hmm.
It is the way that takes the stress off of the liver and kidneys
Yeah, I
because
love
we
sweating.
remove so many toxins from our skin. If you're not using the largest organ of your body, your skin, to remove toxins, well, then your lymph nodes, your liver and kidneys have to do that much more work. So there's so many benefits to sweating, getting out in the sun, using sauna. You get red light, right? You get red light for
Yeah.
free. as long as you do it the first half of the day. So yeah, all these things are huge benefits, and it improves mood. There's a lot of reasons to get outside. Save sun. That's what I'm recommending.
Do you do any cold therapy now?
I'm not a big cold therapy person for myself. Again, it's all based on bio-individuality.
Mhm.
My background's also, besides being a doctor of naturopathy, studied Ayurvedic quite a bit and studied over in China with traditional Chinese medicine, and multiple times in India and Sri Lanka for Ayurvedic medicine at clinics over there. And my body type produces lots of a dopamine,
Mm,
lots of
nice.
norepinephrine, and I'm already amped when I wake up. Like, I'm ready to start the day, and I'm excited. I really am. And it's a far cry from someone who had Addison's disease that didn't once produce cortisol, right? So like, that's not natural for me. Now, if I do a cold plunge, what happens? I get more norepinephrine, adrenaline, dopamine. So for someone like me, it is not only unnecessary, it's more detrimental. Now,
Got it.
I'd still do it. Like, I still will do it probably once a week. And I do it after, though, specific contrast therapy after a hard workout as
Mhm.
well. And there's pros and cons for anti-inflammatories, et cetera. But actually, that it helps my legs. As you were just talking about sprinting,
Mhm.
the only thing that changes as I get older isn't my workout, it's my recovery. I need to recover harder.
Sure.
And so even if I just do my lower body, it's excellent for that.
Mhm.
So for people though with low mood, now again, I'm not giving medical advice, but low mood, depression, low energy, more of the larger endomorph body type,
Mhm.
more mass, easier to gain weight, cold plunge can be a game changer. And I do recommend it. Now, I never recommend it over sauna though. If you can only choose one or the other, sauna every day, all day, over a cold plunge. There's just
Dang.
so much more beneficial research.
Very cool. Well, honestly, thank you so much for joining me. I know your schedule is crazy, and to have you on for the time I did, it's been a real pleasure. And I mean, I love your content. My wife loves your content. Her friends love your content. So thank you so much for joining me. I'll have all your links and stuff in the show notes, so people can find you, find if they don't know about you, get your book, get your program, start working with you. But it's been an honor to have you on, and thank you so much for joining me.
I appreciate your time today as well. Thanks so much. Keep up the great work.